bullshit. Things got hard and you fucking quit. And so I see a lot of people using personal development and spirituality as almost like a drug to feel good constantly. And therefore we interpret anything that feels uncomfortable or challenging, oh, that must mean I'm on the wrong path.
This is Inspired Founders, a podcast that helps you find your true north in business and beyond. I'm Priscilla Skippington, a soul-led entrepreneur passionate about sharing the wisdom of world-leading business minds who have walked the path before us. From their toughest challenges to their greatest triumphs, we explore the stories that have shaped their journey and defined their future. Together, we discover the resilience and redemption it truly takes to achieve success, make a lasting impact on the world, and live a life that is truly fulfilling. Hello everyone. Welcome to another episode of Inspired Founders. In fact, this will be our first episode dropping.
Amazing. That's good.
And what better way to start a podcast than with the amazing, incredible, ultra talented Jack Delosa. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me, Priscilla. As we've spoken about many a times, I'm a huge fan and have a lot of admiration for you and your journey. So looking forward to having a good conversation.
You have admiration for me. That's amazing. I have admiration for you. We have had multiple conversations prior to today, and when I thought of starting Inspired Founders and who I'd like to interview, you were obviously at the top of the list. I've been part of the Entourage, but before that, I've followed you for some time. I've read a couple of your books. I'm totally inspired by you. And so you are the ultimate inspired founder. I really want to have a raw and open and honest conversation today because there's lots of business podcasts out there. I know we've spoken about that, and you know, we can talk about strategy till the cows come home, but what I really want to know is who is Jack Delosa and what makes you unique and what makes you different and how have you achieved everything you have? And if you're open to it, let's do that.
That's exactly what I would love to do.
Amazing. So, Jack, when did you realize that you thought differently and you operated differently to other people? When did you decide your unique way of thinking could actually be your greatest gift?
Yeah, they're really good questions. To answer the first question, when did I realize I thought differently? I think very early on. The very first thought that I remember having, and I don't know how old I was, but I think I remember where I was. I think I would have been about 2 years old. The very first thought I remember having was, oh, they don't know magic exists. That's why I'm here. And I was, sitting.
Oh my gosh, I love that.
Yeah, it's such a crazy thought, particularly at that age. And it's crazy that I remember it because I don't have a great memory around my childhood years, but I distinctly remember this. I was sitting on the floor. My mum was there. There was a group of adults. I can't remember who they were. And they were having a conversation, and I knew enough. I could interpret enough of their conversation to have that thought on the back of it. And then to come to your question around when did I sort of start to realize that it was as different and that it was useful and constructive? I think one of the things that happens is, and you're a really good example of this, Priscilla, when you are attuned to yourself and you create a life that is aligned to who you are and what you truly want, life will be a never-ending, it will never cease to amaze you. Something will happen every week, every month, every quarter, however regularly it is, where you go, isn't that just incredible? And it might be, like what we were talking about before we hit the record button. I'm in this new office. We were in this same office back in 2020. We moved out to another office. When we moved to another office, I thought to myself, man, I really miss that old office. I've now come back in as CEO as the Entourage in October. We were looking for a new office because I didn't like the current, the old one. And we were at a building. They brought us to. We're at Darling Park, which is where I'm sitting right now. And there's 3 buildings here. You can see one of the buildings over my shoulder. And there was a vacancy here. So my director of ops and finance went and viewed about 100 different offices, and then he took me to his favorite 10, the 10 that he thought was going to be most suitable. And one of those, we're in Tower 3 right now, and this is the one that's in front of Darling Harbour, right? And
Yeah.
one of those was in Tower 2. So we get to Tower 2, and I'm thinking I'm going to rock up and I'm going to have this kind of a view. And all you can see in Tower 2 is Tower 3. So you look out the window and there's literally building. That view you can see over my shoulder there.
Yeah.
That's a meter away from the window. So
Yeah. Yeah.
and so I said to them, okay, like it was a great floor, it's a great office, but I said to them something to the extent of, do you have anything available in that building? And they said, no, I don't think so. And then one of the females that was with us said, actually, I think I overheard, she used her co-worker's name, she was speaking to her colleague. I think I overheard said colleague speaking about there might be an opening in that building this morning. And I said, that's interesting. Can you look into that? Because I don't want this office, the one that was looking at building 3, but I'd be interested in going into building 3. It's like, let me throw it. It's probably nothing, but let me follow it up.
Yeah.
We get an email that afternoon, building 3, 5th floor. It's the same office I was in 2020. Sorry, it wasn't even available yet. There was a tenant that was thinking of moving. I asked the question, they responded that afternoon, rock and roll, here we now are. And so
Magic.
Yeah. Well done. Full circle. Magic, right? Fucking magic. Now, I do want to temper that by saying when you are aligned to self and creating every aspect of your life, yes, there will be these serendipities and whether it's practical or cosmic or a bit of both, there'll be many moments like the one right now. So this is the first day. My team are in here Monday. We're shooting this Priscilla on a Thursday. And so I'm in here today. It's me and the Wi-Fi guy setting up the Wi-Fi, right? I'm just in here alone because I'm excited and in case wanted to come and sit in my new old office and chat to you. And so it's yes, there's synchronicities. And I think synchronicities is like the universe winking at you going, you're on the right path. I want to temper that by saying living a life where you are connected to self, particularly if you are somebody with a dream and striving to create great things, is not without its challenges.
Yeah.
If anything, it is significantly more challenging than being asleep. Right. Right. You know what I'm, particularly if you want to be aligned and, living according to your values while starting a business or two, man, you are putting yourself into a position where you are, by definition, your growth is going to require you to overcome obstacle after obstacle after obstacle after obstacle after obstacle. And so I want to temper it because I think one of the problems we have around consciousness and inspiration is this kind of, we get together at conferences and talk about innovation, inspiration. It sounds like rainbows, skittles, and butterflies, and it's not. Life is challenging, and the more aligned you are, the more you're on a mission, the more you want to do and achieve, the more challenging it will become. Yeah. And so I don't use consciousness or spirituality or connectedness or whatever term one wants to use as a way to think life should always be perfect. Yes, there are amazing synchronicities and I spend a lot of my time in awe of our ability to create it. And I believe that personal development is best used when it's used to strengthen us to face life and life's challenges head on. Yeah. And what I mean by that is, I am a spiritual person. I've got spiritual views of the world and universe and our place in it and all that kind of stuff. But I've also got a lot of spiritual friends who I have a deep love and admiration for, and they might do something like start a business, for example. Yeah. Catch up with them 4 or 5 months later, and how's the business doing? And they go, you know what? I got to a point. It was about 3 months in, and it no longer felt like it was in an alignment. I felt like the universe was pointing me in another direction. I said, what are you doing now? And they're like, oh, I'm just between things. I'm like, okay. And said, no, the universe. It was the universe pointing me. And I say to them, bullshit. Things got hard and you fucking quit. Like, let's call a spade, right? And so I see a lot of people using personal development and spirituality as a almost like a drug to feel good constantly. And therefore we interpret anything that feels uncomfortable or challenging, oh, that must mean I'm on the wrong path. And
Oh my
I'm
gosh, I love this so much.
yeah, it's a really limiting way to view the world because being in our comfort zone feels amazing. Why?
Mhm.
Because you're comfortable there. And so doing anything meaningful in life is going to require you to be outside of your comfort zone. And so by definition, you are going to be uncomfortable. And so if you view discomfort as a signpost that you are on the wrong path, then you are going to live your life as a prisoner to your comfort zone,
Mhm.
right? And so when I talk about living a life that's aligned and synchronicities and serendipities and being in awe, I think it's equally, if not more important, to also highlight and emphasize that it comes with a hell of a lot of growth, and growth is discomfort, and that's part of the gift as well. It's not something to be avoided, it's something to be embraced.
Yeah, I love that so much. And I'm glad you gave all those analogies and especially your office and where you are now.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, I can't remember the first time I thought about magic, but I was very much the same. When the movie Matilda came out, do you remember the movie Matilda?
I
And
do
she was
not.
able to, you don't or you do?
I don't. I
No.
don't.
Okay. Well, there's
Yeah.
go and look at it after this.
How old were
Matilda.
we? Yeah.
Yeah, when I was a child, this movie came out called Matilda, and I resonated so much because she was magical and she could open up door handles without touching them and she could make things happen. And I
Yeah.
remember resonating with this movie as a child and thinking, I'm magical. I couldn't open handles without touching them. I'm not that type of magical. But I
Yeah.
had this inner knowing
Yeah.
that I haven't I have a magical gift. I don't know what it is and I don't know how it works, but I know that there is magic within us. And so
Well,
I'm really grateful that you shared that because I thought I was a bit of a lunatic over here.
can I be so bold as to ask you a question? I understand this is your podcast. And I'm here to talk. But
Go for it,
nonetheless,
Jack.
your first podcast. And so your audience is probably interested in getting to know you a little bit more. Because
Mm.
when you say there's magic in you, I 1,000,000% have witnessed that. And yeah, I think anybody that is watching this or that has come into contact with you is witnessed that as well if they've got their eyes open.
Thank you.
What do you think it is? Like, for example, do you have any psychic abilities about you? Like what's going on in terms of how would you best and most clumsily describe your magic?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thanks for asking. It's- uh, so we've obviously had multiple conversations prior to this, and I would say there's different elements to the magic in me. Clumsily say this, I would say yes, I'm an intuitive. I've been very spiritual for most of my life. I'm quite connected, I would say, and so I've had various experiences over my life where I've seen things, heard things um, that aren't explained,
Yeah,
that can't be explained by the naked eye, but I've never felt scared or unsure or anything like that. So, yes, I would say I'm intuitive and psychic to a degree. I wouldn't say I'm going to sit down and read someone's tarot cards and tell them their future. I'm not that. But when it comes to this magic, I would say I've always had this inner knowing
yes,
that I can connect to something higher than myself and that I have support around me when times do get tough.
beautifully put. Yeah, I love that.
And so I would say that's part of the magic. And then the other part would be I feel like I've always had a magic with connecting with people, being able to see people and connect with people. And when I say see them, like truly see them.
Yes.
And when I connect, it's never surface level. I'm one of those people that just wants to go deep straight
Yeah,
away.
yeah, I can't do small talk.
And so I would say there's also a magic in that. And I've
Yeah,
been called the manifesting queen multiple times because it's the same sort of thing. When I decide I want something, I know that I've got that support network around me, whatever that may be, whatever you want to refer to that as.
Mm.
And it happens because I truly 100% believe and commit to
Mm.
that decision, and I make it. It happens. I say I make it happen, but I think it's a group effort, to be honest.
Yeah, to co-creation.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Does that
100.
answer your question, Jack?
I love that. Beautiful point.
Good. So let's keep talking about
Regular
spirituality
scheduled
because it's
programming.
something we are both obviously passionate about, and it's a huge part of. I know it's a huge part of why I'm doing what I'm doing, and my success, and I know it's a huge part of yours as well. Obviously, you had this 2-year-old magic moment, but when after that would you say you've had a spiritual moment that's really cracked you open? Probably more so that's, even pushed you into the business space.
I'll give you two quite foundational examples. So when I was very young, 4, 5, 6, my parents ran a not-for-profit organization called Breaking the Cycle. And so they would take essentially youth at risk off the street, out of jail, out of abusive homes. They'd put them through a, training and a coaching program, and then they'd facilitate them into employment. And they could only take, a finite number of kids, young adults every year. And so they deliberately and purposely choose those from the most challenged of backgrounds.
Mm.
Even though they chose the people from the most challenged of backgrounds, they were the most successful job placement agency for long-term unemployed youth in the country. They were very, very good at what they did. Mum was the head trainer, dad was the managing director. And so I grew up in mum's classroom quite literally. Many days she would, rather than taking me to school, she would take me to work. I'd be sitting in mum's classroom as she taught mindset and personal development and psychology and neuro-linguistic programming and employability skills, right? And so that was my
That's unreal.
class, right? And then you can imagine all of the books and the cassettes. This is cassettes back then. I'm sorry, my age. That were lying around our house. I started to really consume probably around the age of kind of 13, 14 type thing. And so breaking the cycle taught me a lot. And then what happened with breaking the cycle is it was a not-for-profit organization. The government in Victoria sort of restructured the way they issued capital to not-for-profit
Right.
organizations. Breaking the cycle was unsuccessful under the new regime, and therefore the organization collapsed. And at this point, I probably would have been like 11 or 12.
Mm-hmm.
I remember thinking, because Break the Cycle did such meaningful work, like how taking an 18-year-old or 20-year-old or 25-year-old that was on the path towards jail or dying
Mm-hmm.
would recorrect them into living a more meaningful life. And I remember thinking, again, 11 or 12, I remember thinking, who decided money was better used elsewhere? And show me somewhere else that's more important than that. Now, obviously, that's the thought of 11-year-old, right? It's not quite
Yeah.
that, it's not quite that simple in reality, but that was kind of my sense of injustice and frustration at the time. And so the organization collapsed. That's where I get my commercial side from, because I always wanted to create organizations that did meaningful things.
Mm-hmm.
And if breaking the cycle never happened, I probably just would have started not for profits and been a bit more political. If you spoke to me when I was a teenager, I would have told you I wanted to be a politician. Why? Because I just wanted to influence. I wanted to make things better. Then you grow up, you realize people that shape the world are entrepreneurs and their teams, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
innovators and their teams. And so I just wanted to be an entrepreneur. So fast forward, then I start, I've been in business for a long time now, but I started the Entourage in particular in 2010.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and by 2015, we were a $50 million brand, had a team of about 100, a community of about 300,000, doing really good things. And we work with business owners to help them grow faster, right? Similar to yourself, Priscilla, anybody doing 7 or 8 figures or even 6 figures, we help them to grow faster and smarter.
Mm-hmm.
2015, we had parents and students knocking on our door, being like, little Julie finishes high school next year. Can she come study at the Entourage? And we're like, well, not really. We work with business owners, you know what I mean? And then we had so much demand around it that we said, okay, let's do this. Because another thing that I always wanted to do was influence the education system. And so we became an accredited college so that we could offer diplomas and advanced diplomas in business and entrepreneurship so that the little Julies and Johnnies of the world could come through the Entourage. We went into that space incredibly successfully, because when you come from an unaccredited environment and you live and die by your own merit, And then you go into accredited, and it's like people looking for a certificate, and the government's going to fund them, and you're actually good at what you do. We flew to an amazing extent. 6 months in, the government said, if you're a new entrant to the space, if you come into this space over the last 2 years, we're not going to pay you for the next 6 months, because they had some dodgy providers, particularly up in kind of Northern Territory and stuff, who were signing people up and, wasting kind of tax dollars. And they said, with regards to Entourage, they said, you guys are best in class. Some of our like retention rates, continuation rates, success rates were like 10 times industry average, which isn't hard because traditional education is poorly done. But
No, but you're doing well.
We were doing well. We were doing well. And they recognize that, but they, you are in that 2-year bracket. So we're not going to pay you for 6 months. And so what that essentially means is you've still got the students, you've still got the wages, you've still got the office, you've still got all of the costs. You're even recognizing the revenue. You're just not getting the cash. And so for us, that was a cumulative cash gap of about $4 to $5 million. What happened at the end of that period was even worse. They essentially changed the regulations for the entire space in an attempt to push all the students back to university and TAFE. We were now losing $500,000 a month, 3 months away from losing $800,000 a month. I had to go from a team of about 90 to 100 to a team of 40 in a matter of days. And that didn't solve the problem. That just bought me 2 weeks to try and solve the problem. And so the business went into extreme distress, right? And I remember thinking to myself, this is exactly what happened at Breaking the Cycle.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah. Like exactly the same.
Talk about a pattern.
Talk about a fucking intergenerational pattern, right? Yeah. And so I'm like, within my entire being, there was, similar to what you were saying before, Priscilla, I just had a deep knowing. Like, I was talking to liquidators, administrators, for those that don't know what that means, people who help you wind up a business in the least painful way. And they're all telling me the same thing: Jack, you cannot trade out of this. You guys are gone. Like, give up. But I had something in me, a feeling is the wrong word. It was a knowing. It was like, fuck that. I refuse to accept that reality. And I will create consciously, and with whatever help I can garner, I will create a new and a different reality. And so I say that for a couple of reasons. Firstly, patterns arise, and perhaps we are given opportunity to resolve and fulfill intergenerational karma or patterns. But I also say that because your original question was what cracked me open. The death of Breaking the Cycle was really sad. When the Entourage went into extreme distress, that began the hardest 4 years of my life. Like 4 years. We're in extreme distress for a year, like could have been wound up any day. And then anybody that's been in that position knows that it then, while you like are in extreme distress for a year, it then takes multiple years to get back to profitability, and particularly where we were, all this kind of stuff, right? And it was excruciatingly difficult. So for me, it's often, and like touch wood, because I hope that I've learned a lot of lessons throughout these journeys, and I can kind of learn slightly easier going forward.
You've done your hard yards, Jack.
Yeah,
it's a journey, though.
Yeah, exactly. And so during that period, which was the worst of my life, I became smarter. I became wiser. It grew me up. It knocked any arrogance out of me. I became a better son. I disengaged from relationships that no longer serve me. Fuck, I started to meditate, right? Like even like small things, And so what's cracked me open, I think, has been, we spoke before about, the synchronicities and always being in all that plays a part. But then the yin to that yang is the challenging parts also. And I love the phrase that you've used, Priscilla. That's why I keep repeating it. They also crack you open and kind of disassemble any scaffolding you've erected around yourself in such a way that enables you to get back to your true self in a way that you might not have accomplished if it wasn't for the absolute fucking turmoil and destruction of everything that you cared about.
Yeah.
And so I think what cracks one open is, in the beginning at least, challenge.
Mhm. Amazing. Yeah. And I think that's, I mean, as hard as it was for you, I'm sure so challenging. I couldn't even imagine. Like you said, it's sometimes those most challenging things that really do crack us open because we have to shed. We have to, I don't think you would have ever been egotistical, but any of those parts of yourself who maybe, you know, you were very young when you built, very young when you built everything. You were kind of, you know, just not cruising, but you were kind of like, hey, I'm doing this. Hey, I'm doing this. Hey, I'm doing this. There wasn't really any part of Jack that had to be cracked open at that point.
Such a good point. To you, when you say you don't imagine me to be egotistical, that's the thing is, I don't think any of the people around me prior to 2016 would have said I was arrogant, because I don't think I would have presented as arrogant, but I think I might have been slightly, maybe naive is a better word, in my
Mm,
approach. I definitely, I had my head in the clouds, and for a moment, a couple of years, I probably didn't have my feet on the ground, and so
mm,
I lost respect for the basics. And this is a really seductive temptation, particularly for anybody that identifies with consciousness or spirituality or personal development, and you have some success. You start to think, maybe I'm untouchable, and this is
mm,
just, things all gravy, and I'm always going to be successful. And the basic, oh, don't worry about that. Like, all I've known for 5-10 years is absolute, like, don't. And we start to disrespect the basics. We almost start to disrespect form, right? Because
mm,
you think you're above it. And so, yeah, I think that's an interesting pothole to have anticipation of. If somebody is in this audience, they resonate with you and I'm imagining they're probably quite similar to you and I, right? And
mm.
so it's a good one. It's a good one to avoid, and it's a good one to learn, which is always keep your feet on the ground.
Yeah. Yeah, which, like you said, can sometimes be easier said than done. You know, if you are having a lot of success and you're growing quickly. But I think as well, sometimes the universe has a way of pulling us back down.
Yes. Yes. And pulling it back into alignment and pulling us back into truth.
Hmm.
Because it feels like down, it feels like you're being pulled down, but really it's just growth in a different form.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that you said that. Yeah, absolutely. Moving a little bit from spirituality, because we could probably talk about that all day, and personal development. Let's talk a little bit. I mean, you have been, I was looking at your website last week and the Entourage and Meet Jack page, and I was just reading and I was like, what hasn't this man done? Like, where haven't you been interviewed or where haven't you been featured? It's literally been everywhere, which, you know, you should be so proud of yourself for. Out of all of those interviews and all of those publications, yeah, let's go with interviews. All of those places you've been interviewed on TV or podcasts, what has been one interview that's really stood out to you, and what have you taken away? Who have you spoken to that's really had an impact on you?
I've probably had an interesting journey with that, in that I've often walked away from interviews, particularly with high level entrepreneurs, particularly, dare I say it, in this country, a little bit underwhelmed
Mm,
when I'm interviewing them, that is. In that some people become successful in business, but there isn't a lot of substance underneath that.
oh, I love that you've gone there.
Right? And I
We've
don't know,
gone there. We've gone there.
where we're going. I don't know if anyone else has had this experience, but I, I mean, some people do. They're able to buy something or build something for 50 cents. They're able to sell it for $2. They do that a couple of 100 million times, and they make a lot of money, and they're seen as larger than life figures. But then you meet them, and there's not a lot of attunement there. There's not a lot of depth. There's not a lot of purpose. The conversations that I love most is the conversation that we're having now.
Mm,
It's conversations where it's like we're able to go below the surface. We're able to transcend traditional conversation, and explore things that I find significantly more interesting and significantly more meaningful. So I know that doesn't completely answer your direct question, but That's been my experience.
No, I love that. I think that's the perfect answer. And I can now go down as your favorite. So that's good.
Yeah, that's exactly what I said.
Uh, yeah, no, it wasn't the answer I expected, but it's actually the one I really respect the most because I have had similar experiences where, I've looked up to some leaders and I've met them in person and I've been like, "Whoa, you are not what I expected." In that,
Yes,
I said prior, like I'm someone who goes deep. I'm like, there's so many layers to Priscilla, and I
yes,
want I want to see that in other people. I want to hear that from other people.
yes,
What have you gone through to get to where you want to go? And that's the whole idea of Inspired Founders is like there's a story behind who you are and why you do what you do. But a lot of people aren't willing to share it, or they're so disconnected from it
yeah.
that they don't even see it as part of their success.
Give you an example of somebody that I think has a lot of depth, and I don't know whether he is necessarily spiritual because we haven't really kind of used that word, but one person that I've interviewed and is a friend of mine is a guy called Toby Pierce who co-founded Sweat with Kayla Ritsigns, and they built it, they sold it for $400 million, and now recently they've bought it back again. But if you speak to Toby, and let me tell you about Toby, then I'll tell you how old he is. You
Okay.
speak to Toby, and he is a philosopher. He has read every philosophy book, and I don't mean the popular ones. I mean the ones that look like encyclopedias, and they're that thick, and they come in, bundles of 12. But he can also play Mozart on the piano. He's a black belt in jujitsu. He's obviously sold his company for 400 million. Like he's a freak. You speak to Toby, and he does the work in every single sense, and therefore there's such a depth and a richness combined with a real drive and charge and an ability to drive outcomes. And he's 31.
Oh, wow.
I'm 37 now, which is young, but Toby's 31. I remember the first time I interviewed Toby, and I didn't yet know how old he was. I think he would have been 26 or something. We have this conversation. It's amazing. It was actually in this office about 5 years ago.
There you go.
There you go. And after cameras turned off, I said, "How old are you, mate?" And he said 26, and my jaw dropped to the floor. I just couldn't believe it. So, yeah, there's then I've interviewed people like Marie Forleo, who's an incredible entrepreneur over in America. I love Marie.
I love her too.
Steve Wozniak, who co-founded Apple, he's an exceptional entrepreneur. Um, yeah, and so there are I've absolutely worked with and interviewed some people where I've walked away and my whole the boundary conditions of my thinking have been absolutely obliterated, and I felt like I've elevated just from the transmission that I got from the conversation. So
Yeah.
that has happened many, 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 many times. Uh,
Mm.
and as we spoke about before, the other side of the coin also happens as well.
Yes, yeah. No, I love that. And I'm glad you gave some amazing names. I will reach out to Toby then because he sounds like an exceptional person to talk
I was
to.
going to say that. I can introduce you guys. You should definitely talk to him. Next level.
Yeah. Okay. So where to go to from here? You're a master in growing and scaling businesses. And you've even been an investor for a unicorn business. Now, those who don't know what a unicorn business is, I actually didn't know this until I heard this at one of the Entourage days. It's a business that goes from zero to $1 billion in less than 10 years, which to me just blows my mind. When it came, or you can use that particular business as an example, or when it comes to investing in businesses, is this based off of strategic thinking, or is a lot of it based off gut instinct and your feeling towards maybe the founder or the person who owns it?
That particular business was purely commercial. And as I said, I was an investor in that business. I think perhaps equally as interesting is the journey I've been on around, particularly the businesses that I've started and built myself or been, an active shareholder in.
Mm.
What happens is I used to oscillate between the two. Like, am I doing this intuitively or gut feel, or am I being strategic? And so my entire life, almost, particularly, my adult life, because I've been in business my entire adult life, is how do I do both like concurrently, like at the exact same fucking moment? Because the intuitive stuff and the gut feel stuff, and whether it's whether you want to use the word spiritual as well there, comes with a sense of it's around emotional attunement, but that can also lead to emotional impulsivity. And sometimes our emotions aren't the best guide, particularly if they're not explored and checked and filtered, right? Sometimes you've just got a psychological bias and you don't know it, and that's leading to a particular emotion.
Yep.
And then commercially, you can make more informed decisions and perhaps more data-driven decisions. But people like you and I, Priscilla, and a lot of people watching or listening to this, probably don't want to just live that life. That kind of leads to, some of the entrepreneurs I was talking about before, where there's not a lot of heart in it. And so what I've been trying to do for the last 20 years is combine the two. And the best way I can summarize my approach and my principle that really I think distills my thinking around this is develop the intellect in service of the heart. The intellect being the commercial, strategic, and analytical side, the heart being the side that's more attuned to self and where you want to go and what kind of life you want to create. And so you can't just be intuition with no data.
Yeah.
And you don't want to be all data and no intuition because that's boring.
Yeah.
And so for me, it's develop the intellect as servant to the heart, which is really apply yourself intellectually. Otherwise, you're just being intellectually lazy and using spirituality as a method of bypassing doing the boring stuff, and you need to do the boring stuff, right?
Yeah.
And so develop the intellect and apply yourself intellectually, but do it in service of the direction that your heart is pointing.
Yeah, I love that. I can resonate with that. Like, I'm not an investor in a unicorn business, but I do know from a business perspective, that's always been my approach as well. It's like, what does the head say? Like, I've got to use my brain for this, but also what does the gut and my intuition say? Is it the right move? Should I be doing that now? And using the data, but doing it from a place of heart, doing it from a place of, am I truly passionate about this? Does this align? Does it work right now? What's my gut saying?
100%, 100%. And then substantiating or just doing the work to operationalize whatever direction that is well. Yeah.
Yeah. Which you're a master at. I've come and listened to some of your talks, and you're phenomenal in terms of how to structure sales and growth. How you present it is also so easy for others to understand, which I suppose is why the Entourage has done so well. You've created different formulas and strategies that have made the sales process or the marketing process so much easier for the average person to understand.
100%. Yeah, there's two thoughts as you say that. So when you say I'm masterful at it, I've got a lot of experience with it, particularly sales and marketing. Why? Because sales and marketing is just psychology and communication applied to a business context. And I've been studying psychology and communication since I was in mum's classroom at the age of fucking 5. I was
Yes.
reading books at the age of 6. I was listening to the cassettes at the age of 12, and so that stuff, there's 3 decades of research and experience and experimentation. And that's why the marketing and sales and branding stuff really, and then consumer orientated really fascinates me, because it's just me applying all of that stuff into a business context, which I love. The second thing on that is, I think it was Michelangelo that said, if they knew how hard I worked, they wouldn't call it genius.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I think it's purely just relentless experience and not giving up when it would have been really attractive to give up, right? And then the third point I would make around that you really beautifully put, Priscilla, is simple teachings are best. And everyone talks about, you're able to take something complicated and make it simple. And that's a little bit of it. What's actually more fundamental to what's going on there is the things that make the biggest gains in a business are the basics. The things that make the biggest difference in our lives as human beings are the basics. The things that make the biggest difference in our relationships, the basics. How did you greet your partner when you got home? How vulnerable are you being? How much communication is going on? How intimate is the relationship, right? it's the basics, it's the fundamentals. It's that, we need to be reminded more than we need to learn.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was having a conversation with somebody earlier today, and they were saying AI, all this coming, what's going to change? What's going? I said, hold on a second. Everybody asks what's going to change. An equally, if not more important question is what's not going to change?
Mm-hmm.
What are the constants that are the fundamentals that will always be the fundamentals? Because the thing is that as a business owner right now, you might be spending 8 hours a week, diving into AI and all of that kind of stuff, or 2 or 3 days a week diving into the AI stuff. Meanwhile, you're generating all of these leads, but they're not getting contacted.
Yeah.
Or you're generating all of these leads, they're getting contacted, and then those that don't buy aren't being nurtured. Or you're generating all these leads, but you don't have a sales process. Or you've got a great product or service, but you're not marketing or selling it at all because you're in your comfort zone in product or service delivery, right? These things aren't advanced. They're not complicated. They're not complex. My job is to help people understand what are the fundamentals that grow a business. Because we say billion-dollar company, we say $100 million company, and everyone goes, oh, there must be this entire new level of complexity and genius going on. I was like, no. Companies that scale well because they do the basics at scale. That's what it is.
Yeah.
That's the secret. The secret is there is no fucking secret. The secret is focusing on the basics, right? And,
Yeah.
so I think that's a lot of what's going on there.
I need that on a t-shirt. There's no secret.
Yeah. And then on the back it could say, the secrets are the fucking basics. Yeah, let's do that. Let's definitely do that.
Oh, that's your next jumper.
We spend so much time getting lost in convoluted, really high level complex stuff. It's like if everybody listening and watching this did 60% of the basics in each area of life, you would have the most phenomenal life out of anybody that you have ever met.
I love that so much. And for me, just even the last year, I've been working on the basics in just my own life, getting up and going for a walk, making sure I'm exercising. What am I consciously eating? How much water am I drinking? Like just trying to really get back to the basics in my own personal life.
Yes.
And that has really helped me in my business as well, because I'm feeling more grounded, more connected, more like it is always the basics. It is always the basics.
And that's a really good, I often think of this, that's a really good example. So one of my goals is often I'm trying to lose body fat percentage and body fat and gain muscle, right? And so and as we know, the weight loss industry and the kind of bodybuilding industry, there's so many, particularly around the weight loss, there's so many fads. It's like, the lemon water diet and the this diet and the carnivore diet and there's all these different people saying different things, and everybody thinks they're a scientist and everybody has the answer. Meanwhile, nobody agrees on fucking anything. But it's a really interesting thing that you learn is if you want to lose weight, for example, like I, go through seasons where I do, all that matters from a weight loss perspective is, are you consuming less calories than you're burning? Because if I burn 2,000 calories a day or 2,500 calories a day, let's say I burn 2,500 and I eat 1,800, I will lose weight.
Mm-hmm.
That 1,800 can be cake.
Diet of mud cake.
Yeah. That 1,800 can be fucking wine. Now, it's not, and that wouldn't be good for health, right? We're talking about weight loss.
Yeah.
All that matters is not the lemon water and the fad diet and the this and this person said that, and we've now just learned this. It's like all that fucking matters is, are you consuming less calories than you're burning? And if you are, you will lose weight, and if you're not, then you won't. And the extent and the speed at which you lose weight is the extent and the speed at the extent of your calorie deficit on a daily basis. That's it. Nothing else matters. Yeah, and so you've got this field that there's a lot of the world is interested in, but everyone's fucking lost and running around in gypsy land talking about different things when there's just this one thing that matters more than all of that bullshit put together. You know what I mean? Dude. And so people like you and I, Priscilla, who, we're here to help people and help elevate people, is often it's the simple stuff. It's people need to be reminded. How long have we known about calorie deficit for? Probably forever. How many people actually, are conscious of it and do it today? just about nobody. That's why obesity is the highest that it's ever been. And so that's the gap.
Mm. Yeah, I love that so much.
Mm.
Yeah, and I think as well too that I know for young in my younger 20s I was very body conscious. I was a dancer and then I got really bad stress fractures in both of my shins and I had to give that away
Mm.
and very abruptly. And so I was quite depressed for a few years. Obviously with that gained a bit of weight. I was never big, but I thought I was.
Yeah.
And so that was a whole spiral in itself.
Right.
But with that, and I struggled a lot with weight until I had my children,
Mm.
until I had my first son, and without even, because I was no longer thinking about myself, I was no longer the center of my attention.
Mm.
Again, we've just gone deep because this is what Priscilla does.
Absolutely.
My body was no longer the center of my attention, my baby was.
Yes.
I dropped all the weight like that.
Yeah.
And people were asking me, I had so many messages. I was catching up with people and they'd be like, how do you lose all this weight? What diet are you on? What are you doing? I'm like, I'm actually, for the first time in my life, not dieting.
Mm.
For the first time in my life, I'm not dieting. I'm not thinking about my next meal or what I'm consuming. I'm actually just really in awe of my baby. And I'm really in awe of the life that I have right now. And I'm
Yeah.
just super grateful for the body. My body gave birth to that child.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I think that was such a realization. And I've never worried about my body since having children. And that's what, 7 years ago now.
That is amazing. That's amazing.
So
Yeah.
a bit different angle, but
No, it's the exact same angle. Panda, my partner, has had the exact same experience. So our little Ariel is 14 months old, as you know.
she's so cute. Oh my gosh.
She has his daddy wrapped around her little finger, as does Panda has her partner wrapped around her. They've both got me wrapped around their little finger, which I adore. Panda's had the same experience that you just articulated. And she's not trying to do anything. It's just occurred to the point where I'm right now as we speak on a very strict nutritional and training program to try and accelerate some stuff. I'm trying to encourage her to do the opposite. I'm like, can you eat the cake and like the burger? Like she when she needs to eat a little bit more. And to ground it in practicality, what I think Panda has found is that because we wear these aura rings, right? And so it tracks your activity.
Yes, I've seen you wearing them before. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And so she moves a lot. She
Mm.
gets a lot of steps. It's not uncommon for
I mean,
pandas.
she just moves generally. I mean, she's always jumping around.
That's even
Or
before
dancing.
Panda is, yeah, Panda's Panda. She loves an adventure. And so it's not uncommon for her to, walk between 16 to 21K in a day, which is half a marathon
Wow.
with undeliberately. She hasn't exercised, but
I feel lazy.
yeah, me too. She's chasing Ariella around, or they're going shopping, or they're
Yeah.
going to the aquarium behind us.
Yeah.
She's doing stuff,
Yeah. And you're pushing a pram
and you're pushing a pram or carrying a
or
baby.
carrying. That's right.
And because she's so engaged, and this is what I definitely wouldn't suggest, but she forgets to eat.
Yeah.
So that's part of the role of as to how
Or
I can.
you eat the leftovers that your kid didn't eat.
Right, exactly. That's part of my role is, making sure I force feed her water and food and all sorts of stuff. And so I definitely wouldn't encourage anybody to, forget to eat. That's not the point. But the point is that she's so engaged at what she's doing that she can forget to eat, and she's moving more than ever. And so to your point, she is slimmer than she's ever been. Not that she ever needed to be that way.
No.
That's how it's panning out.
Yeah. And I definitely, yeah, to that point, I definitely don't think I consciously missed meals. I don't think I consciously was trying to, lose weight. Definitely not. But yeah, it does. I mean, you're carrying around another child, you're squatting to pick them up constantly. You are exercising a lot more.
The whole process of becoming a mother, carrying something inside of you, and then the birthing process, and then the first 3 months, and Panda breastfed for about 3 or 4 months. So it was a slightly shorter period than I'm guessing what the average is, but still, that's
Mm.
that's a every 3 hours, 24 hours a day type job. And so the strain and the stress that goes on to the human body of a mother
Mm,
is unlike any other human experience, right?
yeah.
And so, yeah, the respect I think that we all gain through that process for mums is incredible.
Yeah. Thank you. Let's talk about you for a moment. You've obviously done a lot, achieved a lot, created a lot. Would you say, and you've also just, I suppose, had a change now moving into your old but new office. Would you say you're 100% fulfilled? Are you happy? Are you content? You just want to do what you're doing and cruise along? Or is there a part of Jack that still feels like there's more in the tank? There's something more you've got to do and share with the world?
This is a really interesting question because the answer is both at an
Hmm.
all-time high. And I think, the fulfillment piece, I do feel very aligned in mission at the moment, which for me is business. And when you have an exceptional partner who you are incredibly values aligned with, and Panda and I, we just work as a team so incredibly well in, I'd like to say, just about every aspect, right?
Yeah.
Then you introduce this beautiful daughter. I mean, like the level of fulfillment one can derive from starting and growing a family is, pretty special and pretty unique.
Yeah.
To the other side of the question in terms of I've still got more to do. I I honestly think that I'm warming up, and I don't
Mm.
say that. I'm not exaggerating in the slightest. I think we'll have another. I mean, you and I are talking all the time, but let's say we do another podcast in 5 years. I think both of our journeys between now and then will demonstrate that. Right?
Yeah.
I'm literally. I feel like I'm about to start.
How amazing, considering all you've already created. And I think that's really testament to being a true entrepreneur who is really aligned. I don't know if the work or the journey is ever finished. Like,
No.
truly, I don't ever imagine, like, people talk about retirement and super, and I
Yeah.
don't know why, but I've never resonated with any of that.
No.
I don't look forward to retirement. I look forward to seeing what I can create for the rest of my life,
100%.
and for who I can impact for the rest of my life. I don't see an end. I don't, and I don't look forward to an end either.
No, yeah, I second all of that.
Mm. Well, Jack, it's been amazing talking with you. Thank you so
So
much for
good.
jumping on today.
Thank you so much for having me. I am so glad you're doing this podcast. The world needs more Priscilla, and this is one of the ways we can make that happen.
Thank you so much for tuning into this inspirational story. Lucky for you, the inspo doesn't stop here. We have an Inspired Founders Facebook community, a space created just for you to learn, listen, and ask questions from our inspired founders themselves. This unique community is designed to uplift and motivate you to take actions on your own stories and dreams. You'll find the link within our show notes. We can't wait to see you in there.
This is a Guide Your Light Network production, creating podcasts with purpose.